That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years.
Sunny Hostin has always viewed herself as a moral compass on daytime television. With her signature blend of righteous indignation and academic-sounding talking points, she carved out a space on The View as the unapologetic voice of social justice, often steering the conversation with a sharp glare and a firm tone. But in a moment that no one saw coming, and the internet will never forget, she wasn't just challenged, she was dismantled, and not even by someone in the room, Greg Gutfeld. And Tyrus didn't need to sit across from her to send her argument into a tailspin. They exposed her from afar, and the result was a stunning collapse of credibility that played out like live TV theater. It all started with a typical segment on The View, one of those hot-button discussions where the co-hosts pass moral judgment with a dose of daytime sass. Sunny, as usual, sat front and center with her polished vocabulary and unwavering moral stance. The topic? Race, privilege, and crime. Territory Sunny believes she owns. But what unfolded would quickly show that the territory she'd been claiming was riddled with cracks. Gutfeld, with his trademark smirk and piercing sarcasm, cut through Sunny's speech like a hot knife through butter. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't call names. He simply pointed out the one thing she didn't expect: her own ancestry. In a jaw-dropping revelation, Gutfeld referenced a segment from PBS's Finding Your Roots, where Sunny herself discovered that she is descended from European slave owners. The irony was brutal. The woman who had built her media persona around being a champion of reparations and the voice of the oppressed was now facing a truth that completely contradicted her narrative. Sunny looked stunned. She stammered. She blinked. But there was no script for this moment. Only the harsh light of inconvenient facts. Tyrus, always more measured but equally lethal, followed up with a calm, blistering critique. He didn't mock, he didn't grandstand. He brought receipts, statistics, patterns, and policies that didn't just challenge Sunny's talking points, they obliterated them. While Sunny framed crime as a misunderstood social condition rooted in systemic injustice, Tyrus countered with numbers. Real numbers. He pointed out the hypocrisy of celebrities who live in gated communities with private security while preaching about defunding the police for everyone else. He exposed the disconnect between elite narratives and everyday reality. And in doing so, he peeled back the curtain on Sunny's entire media persona. As the segment unfolded, something changed on the set of The View. The energy shifted. The usual head-nodding co-hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Ana Navarro, suddenly didn't have much to say. Their eyes darted nervously. The synchronized agreement that defined the show started to unravel. Sunny, still reeling from the ancestry bombshell, attempted a pivot. She leaned into her usual strategy: shift the topic, cry misinformation, throw out buzzwords like dangerous rhetoric, and position herself as the victim. But this time, it didn't work. The audience didn't clap. The internet didn't sympathize. They roasted. Clips from the moment went viral. One particularly painful segment where Sunny confused the cause of a solar eclipse, suggesting it was linked to climate change, became instant meme material. The caption, "When delusion meets data." Comment sections lit up with disbelief and ridicule. Viewers began questioning how someone so confident in their opinions could be so misinformed on basic science. And then came the inevitable backlash. Screenshots, TikToks, compilation reels mocking her contradiction-riddled statements. Sunny was no longer in control of the conversation. She was the conversation. What makes this collapse so notable isn't just the irony, it's what it reveals about the modern media ecosystem. For years, The View has operated as an echo chamber, a bubble where hosts repeat each other's sentiments with slight variations in phrasing. It's a place where challenging the dominant narrative is treated as a betrayal, and disagreement is replaced with choreographed nods. When Sunny speaks, the others don't just listen, they obey. But in this moment, reality kicked the door down. Gutfeld and Tyrus didn't play by The View's rules. They brought facts to a feelings fight, and it left the hosts stunned and scrambling. And perhaps most damning of all is what happened next, or rather, what didn't happen. On the next episode of The View, there was no acknowledgement of the viral moment, no reflection, no accountability. Instead, the show launched into a segment about dogs doing yoga. That's right, from identity politics and ancestry bombshells to downward dog in 30 seconds flat. The hosts acted like nothing happened, like Sunny's meltdown hadn't just set the internet on fire. It was a masterclass in damage control, or denial, depending on how you look at it. The silence was louder than any apology, but the viewers noticed. The mask had slipped. The illusion of intellectual superiority, the high moral ground, the manufactured outrage, it all rang hollow now. What was once framed as passionate commentary had been exposed as elitist self-righteousness. And what made it worse? Sunny's refusal to own any of it. Instead of confronting the facts, she buried them under layers of deflection and feigned victimhood. And in doing so, she proved Gutfeld and Tyrus right. The real story here isn't just about Sunny Hostin, it's about what happens when ideology meets accountability, when carefully curated media personas collide with actual facts. It's about a television culture that rewards outrage but punishes introspection. And it's about an audience that's waking up to the game. They're no longer applauding on cue. They're asking questions, they're thinking critically, and they're realizing that not every person with a microphone deserves to be called an expert. This wasn't just a bad day on television, it was a turning point. Sunny Hostin didn't just lose an argument, she lost control of the narrative. And in today's world, that's everything. Once the internet sees through the facade, there's no going back. Every future monologue, every emotional plea, every moral lecture will be filtered through the lens of that collapse. And that's the kind of exposure that no media spin can undo. As the dust began to settle, one thing became unmistakably clear. The View had no intention of addressing what had just happened. No corrections, no clarifications, no internal reflection. They didn't walk it back, nor did they stand by it. Instead, they did what mainstream outlets often do when faced with a credibility crisis. They pretended it never happened. This is the playbook of daytime media at its most manufactured. When the truth hits too hard, just pivot to puppies and fluff. But the audience wasn't fooled. Viewers across platforms noticed the silence. The clip of Sunny's ancestral revelation from Finding Your Roots was replayed endlessly on social media, often paired with her previous comments about white privilege and reparations. The contradictions were too glaring to ignore. Here was a woman who made a career out of lecturing others on systemic injustice, now facing the inconvenient truth that her own lineage was rooted in the very history she railed against. And yet, instead of acknowledging the complexity, she doubled down. That's where the real damage was done. Not in the revelation itself, but in the refusal to deal with it honestly. It's one thing to be surprised by your family history, it's another to pretend it doesn't challenge your public stance. Sunny chose the latter, and in doing so, she revealed just how performative her outrage often is. The internet had a field day. Memes cropped up with captions like, "Descendant of slave owners calls for reparations," and "When ancestry ruins activism." Even longtime viewers of The View began asking uncomfortable questions. Was Sunny's outrage ever genuine, or was it part of a brand? A carefully cultivated identity wrapped in just the right amount of elitism to sound authoritative? Greg Gutfeld, always ready with a one-liner that bites like a headline, didn't hold back. In a later segment on The Five, he quipped, "The real sign of the apocalypse is someone this confused having a law degree." His tone was mocking, but his point cut deep. How can someone so quick to judge others be so unaware of their own contradictions? Tyrus, in his characteristically composed style, added another layer. He called out the double standards, pointing to how people like Sunny often demand accountability from others while refusing to hold a mirror to themselves. This was never just about a genealogy surprise. It was about credibility. And that's the one currency you can't fake in today's digital age. When you lose credibility, you lose the room, you lose the narrative, you lose the audience. But what really made the collapse so complete wasn't just the exposure, it was the response, or more accurately, the lack of one. On the next day's episode of The View, the show didn't just avoid the topic, it staged a theatrical return to normal. Sunny sat in her usual seat, makeup flawless, tone unchanged, as if nothing had happened. The show ran through pop culture updates and political rants, with zero mention of the firestorm she'd ignited. That silence spoke volumes. It told the audience that The View isn't interested in truth, it's interested in control. Control of the conversation, control of the narrative, control of how the public perceives them. But that control is slipping. Every clip that circulates online, every meme that exposes a contradiction, every viewer who sees through the carefully rehearsed performances, each of these chips away at the illusion. Sunny's downfall isn't just a media blooper, it's a cultural marker. It's the moment a mainstream pundit got caught in her own ideological trap. It's the moment the emperor had no clothes and everyone saw it at the same time. The fact that it came from two commentators on another network who weren't even in the room makes it even more poetic. Because that's the thing about truth. It doesn't need a microphone. It doesn't need a fancy set or a panel of hosts agreeing in unison. Truth just needs to be spoken plainly. Gutfeld and Tyrus did just that. No theatrics, no emotional baiting, just facts. And when facts are delivered without fear, they land. Like punches that leave a mark. The fallout continued beyond the studio. Commentators across platforms began dissecting Sunny's broader track record, her selective outrage, her habit of framing disagreement as racism, and her tendency to treat political debate as a personal grievance session. Each incident added fuel to the fire. Her pattern was clear. Preach from a high horse, collapse when confronted, then pivot to victimhood. And yet, even after being exposed, she remained defiant. That's the part that stuck with viewers. It wasn't just the hypocrisy, it was the refusal to acknowledge it. There's something deeply unsettling about a public figure who is wrong, caught, and still insists they're right. That level of arrogance doesn't just breed cynicism, it confirms it. But here's what matters most. This wasn't just a takedown of Sunny Hostin. It was a takedown of the system that props up people like her. The system that rewards outrage over facts. That values performance over truth. That treats dissent as a threat and conformity as a virtue. Gutfeld and Tyrus didn't just roast a host, they exposed a media machine that has long been overdue for accountability. And in a strange twist of fate, it may have been Sunny herself who delivered the final blow, without even realizing it. Her attempt to spin the moment into another tale of persecution only highlighted how hollow her narrative had become. You can only cry wolf so many times before the audience stops listening, and when you're left yelling into the void, the silence is louder than any applause. By the time the dust began to settle, it was no longer just about Sunny Hostin or even The View as a show. It had become something bigger, a symbol of how quickly public trust evaporates when those in power act like the rules don't apply to them. The takedown wasn't just viral, it was viral for a reason. The public is tired of being talked down to by elite voices who claim to represent the average person but live in a completely different world. Tired of double standards, of selective outrage, of smug lectures disguised as journalism. And when the curtain gets pulled back, as it did with Sunny, there's no way to re-hide what's been exposed. One of the most powerful moments came not from a mic drop or a cutting insult, but from a simple observation made by Tyrus. While Sunny was giving what many described as an emotionally charged TED Talk on policing, identity, and systemic injustice, Tyrus calmly dismantled the argument by pointing out something so obvious. It stung. Most of the people pushing for police reform live in neighborhoods that will never need that reform. The people they claim to speak for, they're the ones left to deal with the consequences. Sunny, sitting in a multi-million-dollar home surrounded by cameras and praise, doesn't speak for them. She doesn't know them. She doesn't live like them, and it showed. What followed was more than a roast. It was a reckoning. And while The View tried to move on, the internet never forgets. Viewers began sharing older clips of Sunny, questioning how someone who speaks so passionately about injustice could have missed the contradictions in her own words for so long. The mask of credibility had been shattered, and behind it was a media figure more concerned with narrative than with truth. It's easy to dismiss this as just another TV moment, another viral clip that will fade by next week, but that would be missing the point entirely. Sunny's collapse is part of a bigger story, one about trust. And once trust is broken, it doesn't come back just because the next episode rolls around. It has to be earned. And that's the part Sunny and The View still don't seem to understand. The final irony? When the clips went viral and the memes flooded timelines, Sunny didn't issue a response. She didn't acknowledge the backlash. Instead, she went right back to her usual routine, moralizing, judging, and framing herself as the enlightened one in a room full of confused masses. But that strategy only works when the audience is still buying what you're selling. And this time, they weren't. In the days that followed, something incredible happened. Viewers began tuning out. Ratings showed a noticeable dip. Comments on The View's official social media pages grew more critical, less forgiving. Even longtime fans started voicing concerns, asking for more balanced discussions, for actual debate instead of groupthink. The veil was lifted, and what they saw underneath wasn't what they had signed up for. It's not hard to see why this moment resonated so strongly. For years, shows like The View have painted dissent as dangerous and framed opposing opinions as ignorance or bigotry. But what happens when the truth pushes back? When logic, facts, and calm critique pierce through the veil of performative outrage? That's what Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus brought to the table without even sitting at it. Their approach was simple. They didn't scream, they didn't whine, they didn't rely on applause or emotion. They simply let the facts do the work. And when you pit facts against theater, facts win every time, especially when the audience is paying attention. And now that they are, it's going to be harder for people like Sunny to hide behind the usual defenses. The victim card? Played. Out. The moral high ground? Exposed. The righteous glare? Dull without credibility. In this new media age, performance alone isn't enough. You have to have substance behind your words. Otherwise, your downfall isn't just inevitable, it's deserved. This moment wasn't just about putting Sunny in her place. It was about giving the audience something they've been craving for years. Accountability. Watching Sunny collapse under the weight of her own contradictions wasn't just satisfying, it was long overdue. And it sent a message to every other media figure who's built their brand on empty righteousness. The internet is watching, and it remembers. Because, in the end, no one is above the truth. Not even the self-proclaimed moral authorities of daytime television. If you're tired of media echo chambers and want more truth, less theater, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a takedown like this. 1. And drop a comment below. Do you think Sunny Hostin should be held accountable? Or will The View continue pretending nothing happened? Let's hear your thoughts. You're the real voice that matters.